Well, this is a first. We have the Managing Director of the ABC about to join us on 2GB. Hugh Marks is really the first one who said yes. We've invited many ABC bosses on the show before, and most of them run the other way. But since taking over the job as ABC Managing Director, Hugh Marks has been talking a lot. He's been talking about the importance of the ABC evolving and being relevant to everyone. He's been talking about the need to lift audience share and to learn from past mistakes. And he's been talking to some of the ABC's biggest critics. Now, he may not know this, but some ABC staff were very angry when the new boss, Hugh Marks, was quoted in the Australian newspaper owned by Rupert Murdoch. Hugh Marks says, as a taxpayer-funded organisation, the ABC has to be open to feedback and value transparency. I'm very happy to say that the ABC Managing Director, Hugh Marks, now joins us in the studio.
Good morning, Ben.
Nice to have you here. Now, do we need to satisfy Media Watch and make a declaration of some sort that we once worked together at Channel 9?
Probably. I think I was probably the person responsible for putting you in that chair at the end of the day.
Probably. So let's just get that out of the way. How are you dealing with the formalities of the ABC after working in commercial TV and looking after shock jocks on 2GB?
Yeah, look, there are similarities and there are differences. I think we've spoken about this a bit. The similarities are, generally, I think people really want to serve the public. They're interested in their work. They're very passionate about their output. So that passion is consistent across both organisations. I think with the ABC, the one thing that can be different is, like, you guys here are a commercial enterprise. Profit is a fundamental objective. I heard some great advertising wrangling you were trying to do this morning, inviting JB Hi-Fi onto the show.
Correct.
So, that gives people a certain focus, and it also means when you're successful, because, there's a thing that the team can rally around. At the ABC, it's a sense of public purpose, serving the public, and that can mean different things to different people. So giving that great clarity going forward, so we're really clear what we're trying to achieve and why I think is part of the ambition for this next period.
Do you want them to be more results driven?
Not really, but I think, serving more Australians and meaning more to more Australians, I think is something that I've said a lot, but I think it's a phrase we really need to take to heart, and I think we've got to be quite critical about the way we go about doing that. And I think those are discussions that we'll be having over the next 12 months. It's not that most people aren't in that mindset, but being clear about what that means and what that means for everybody in the organisation is something I think we've got to do a lot better at.
Would you like to see a wider range of political opinions on the ABC?
Well, political opinions, I think we do get a wide range of, certainly from the politicians. I think sometimes the thing we've got to do a bit more on is the sort of stories that we select to pursue.
What about more conservative voices? You wouldn't like to hear some more conservative voices on the ABC sharing their political opinions?
Yeah, I've said a lot lately. We need to be more of a town hall. And a town hall concept means hearing, really relevant objectives from different people and seeing where they differ. One thing that I think we've fallen into a trap of a lot is it's easy to shout people down. It's easy to criticise, and if we allow that to be the environment which we operate, then we end up in this sort of divisive media environment. I think what we've got to do is find where people can come and agree, and people come from different perspectives. And often when you put them in a room and you make them discuss things in a non-adversarial environment, you will find similarities, and that provides the foundations to go forward. So that town hall is something I want to do a lot more of.
This is Hugh Marks, the Managing Director of the ABC. He once upon a time was my boss at Channel 9. Now, what's the ABC's approach going to be to Pauline Hanson? Because One Nation is now one of the most popular political parties in Australia, but you've had ABC hosts like Patricia Carvella saying on air there are concerns around legitimising One Nation. She said, if they win their first lower house seat, that begins the process of legitimising them. So does that mean that the party that's been around for decades, One Nation, has been illegitimate until now?
I think what PK was saying was she was actually referring to comments made by Senator Ron Boswell some time ago, and was about whether the coalition should do preference deals with One Nation. And Ron Boswell said at the time that if we do preference deals with One Nation, that will legitimise them. So she was just quoting that.
Separate from the quote of Ron Boswell, she said after that, on her own steam, if they win their first lower house seat, that begins the process of legitimising them.
Well, that's what that quote set up everything that went. So what she was talking about was the preference deal, whether that got One Nation over the line or not, we suspect not. We suspect they would have won anyway. But what her comment was that preference deal, if that led to One Nation winning, that process would mean then, okay, they won one seat, then they can go on, the public sort of accepts this is the thing, and that was all referencing that One Nation
You
deal.
can see why Pauline Hanson would hear that and think, well, hang on a moment, I'm a legitimate party. I've been around for 30 years. Why is the ABC talking about people legitimising us? I'm now potentially the most popular political leader in the country.
If you go back to that interview, Ben, you'll see she also said the best poll of any is an election. She also said this was 30 years of work by Pauline Hanson to get to that point.
Okay.
So there were plenty of points where she said, you know what, this is a triumph for Pauline and One Nation, and the polls say one thing, but the elections really tell the story.
Was it wise of your chairman, Kim Williams, to describe One Nation as a policy-free zone?
Look, Kim expresses his own views from time to time. That was on a podcast.
I think that means no, it wasn't wise. I mean, it's not wise, is it, Hugh Marks, when, even though he's not a journalist in an ABC newsroom, you're at an organisation where you're trying to get everyone to follow the rules and say, look, we don't go expressing our own political opinions. We need to make it really clear what we're doing here. And there you've got the chairman saying One Nation's a policy-free zone. That was just dumb.
Well, as One Nation pointed out, they do have a bunch of policies on their website, and the One Nation thing is interesting. We've done some research lately with our audience just to find out what's going on with audiences at the moment, and we found three things. One is people are feeling exhausted, and they're needing escape. And we've got to take that on board in terms of the sorts of programming and things that we bring to the audience. I think the other thing is this unrelenting scroll at the moment. It's just constant pressure and media coming at you and just information. So that's and the other part to it that we found is this mistrust in institutions. All these things are coming together at the same time. There's certainly a mood in the public that is reflected in how they're now, expressing their opinions. And I think for all of us, including in the media, we've got to take that on board.
Okay, you've been accused of rewarding the advocate and activist Grace Tame with her own podcast on the ABC. This is despite her chanting "Globalise the Intifada" and downplaying sexual violence during the October 7 attacks. Grace Tame's comments have cost her public support and she's been forced to close down her foundation. So is the ABC really listening to feedback?
Oh, we certainly are. Look, that podcast was started well before those comments that she made. So, and it was an important podcast. And I think if you take the time to listen to it, and I've got great feedback about it, parents with children who have autism, I think, have really benefited from the content. So in all these things, it's a balance between, what the content is that we're trying to achieve. Is there real public purpose to it? Obviously, with Grace involved, that was controversy. I understand the controversy.
I bet you've received lots of complaints.
Well, I understand the complaints. We don't condone the comments that Grace made and those particular comments you refer to, but the podcast itself and the benefits that it's brought, I think, can give us comfort that there's public purpose behind it.
Did you consider it all thinking, all right, well, someone else made the call to give her the podcast, but now these comments have been made, including downplaying the sexual assault of women on October 7. Did you not think to yourself, well, I think I've got to can this thing?
Look, I've spoken to Grace about these issues. I think there's an opportunity for her to clarify what she really believes. She would say that she has, and that her social media presence has attempted to clarify those comments. Whether that's been achieved or not, I don't know. But Grace, I know, is against violence against anybody, and particularly women and children.
The Grace Tame controversy has caused some headaches for another ABC employee, Charlie Pickering. He spotted a protest outside the ABC and decided to go outside and find out what all the fuss was about. And Avi Yemeni from Rebel News then asked Charlie Pickering, one of your hosts, about the Grace Tame podcast.
How do you feel about the fact that they hired Grace Tame after all of that?
I do actually think it's problematic. That's my personal opinion.
Do you really think that there's a misunderstanding? Do you think she doesn't know? Do you think people can actually plead ignorance at this point?
I think you could argue a lot of people that jump on protest bandwagons are ignorant.
So Charlie Pickering was brutally honest. He said Grace Tame's appointment was problematic. He said some protest chants are ignorant, but this did not go down well at the ABC. And sure enough, the following day, a very different Charlie Pickering appeared on ABC Radio.
Unfortunately, I was ambushed by a known provocateur and pressed into a conversation that was not planned and that I definitely had no intention of being a part of.
Poor Charlie thinks he was ambushed?
Look, Charlie admitted that was an error. It was his own comments. He made it clear that it wasn't the view of the ABC. He took it on the chin, accepted that it was the wrong thing to do. It was the wrong thing to engage with Avi, particularly in that environment. So, I think
A bit naive, isn't it? I mean, he went outside to talk to protesters. He stood in front of a TV camera to do an interview. He told the world what he really thinks about Grace Tame's appointment. And then the worst part, the following day he spins bullshit to his audience about being ambushed. He wasn't ambushed.
Oh, look, a bit of ambush and a bit not. No, he admitted that was an error, and it was a good lesson for Charlie in his first week on air.
If that was an ambush, then this is an ambush. I mean, he stood in front of a camera and a microphone.
Yes, he did, and he admitted that it was an error.
Okay, what else are we going to talk to you about this morning? Why don't we change the pace just a little bit and talk about... Show's an Aussie success story. It was the most streamed show in the US for the second consecutive year in 2025. So Bluey has gone global, Disney deals, merchandise everywhere, licensing around the world, billions generated. But someone at the ABC stuffed up the merchandising and streaming rights. So now all of those massive profits go to the BBC, not the ABC. It was a financial failure that could have funded the entire ABC budget twice over. Is this the world's worst deal?
I don't know. We're looking at this in hindsight. It's always good to judge deals in hindsight and foresight. It was only $2 million that we had to come up with to actually secure the rights. It's not so much the merchandising rights, it's the international program sale rights where the real value is. That's the big deal with Disney that brings in the big bucks. The merchandising rights, because I've been in this business a long time, Ben, are always worth a little bit less than the television rights. So at the time, the ABC had a policy that all global rights were outsourced to somebody who was prepared to take the risk, because the revenue could also have been zero. So, at the time, I guess they made the decision to say, we're not going to take that risk. Somebody else is prepared to do it. The important thing for us is we get the show to Australian audiences. Wow.
So how much income's going to the UK that could be going here?
I mean, we don't really know, but if you read the sort of correspondence or the information about this and you say that Bluey makes $1 billion a year in revenue, by the way, there's one other show that makes $1 billion a year in revenue, Australian show. It's the Australian version of MasterChef.
Okay.
Another show. So it does point to the fact that creativity that happens here can have great value globally.
This opportunity's been missed before. It happened with Bananas in Pyjamas as well.
Well, I'm not sure about that. Bananas is owned by the ABC. So Bananas in Pyjamas is a show we're doing again in Adelaide.
It sits commercially within the Endemol Shine Banjay structure, so that's French-owned.
Yeah, that's the animated version of Bananas in Pyjamas, but the actual characters and format are owned by the ABC, and we're doing it again at the moment in Adelaide.
I'm guessing what taxpayers want to know is if we're creating these great shows and if they're killing it on the world stage, we want to make sure in future that we're reaping the benefits here down under.
Definitely, and I think my experience, I've been in this business now for many years. Many of those years I've spent in television production. My expertise has been in deal doing behind the scenes of television production, how we're going to maximise the benefits that we can get out of the IP that we create in Australia. We have brought a renewed focus to that at the ABC, and they're not easy to come across, these billion-dollar franchises, but we will be putting all efforts to try and come up with the next one, and we will be making sure that we are involved when the next one comes along.
Good to hear. Why do you do these interviews and people before you have not?
I can't talk to that, Ben, but I think, since joining the ABC, and making the decision to go there in the first place, which was not an easy decision. I had a nice life. It was a difficult decision to do, but I think it's important. I think a strong public broadcaster is important, and as a public broadcaster we have to accept that the taxpayer is our owner through the Parliament of Australia, so being transparent and being out and about and talking to everybody and putting yourself in an environment where you do have to justify the decisions you make, I think is important.
And you even talk to people like journalists at the Australian newspaper who work for Rupert Murdoch who are critics of the ABC. Did you know that a lot of ABC staff members were angry the first time they read quotes from Hugh Marks in the Australian?
Well, I'd be hypocritical, wouldn't I, if I didn't talk to our, everybody in the industry on the same basis that we expect everybody in politics to talk to us at the ABC. So I think that's just me accepting that I have to put myself in every environment, and I have to put the ABC transparently on the front foot to everybody that has legitimate questions to ask.
We've only got a minute left, but just a last topic on a couple of big court cases. We were warning on 2GB, hey, the ABC's going to lose this thing on Heston Russell and Antoinette Lattouf. You guys should wave the white flag. Instead, your legal department spent millions of dollars of taxpayers' money and lost in the end. There are some lessons to be learned there, surely.
Definitely lessons to be learned. There's been a big change in personnel over the time since those cases, at all levels, including at the MD level, obviously. Also have a lot of years of experience in running many of those major cases. So at the moment we have a very low number of defamation or legal cases against the ABC, and that's the way I'd like to keep it. Being in this business, though, and if you want to do good stories, sometimes you're going to put yourself at exposure to a legal claim, and that's just part of the business.
To make an omelette, you've got to break a few eggs, I think the saying goes. It's nice to talk to you. Welcome to 2GB, and I hope we can do it again.
Thanks, Ben.